My name is Tyler Fornes, and I am one of the co-hosts of the Good, the Bad, and the Hungy AEW podcast here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. We take a broad scope approach to the world of All Elite Wrestling and the entire universe of Tony Khan. We talk about the big matches, the big stars, the promos, the storylines, and we also look at it from a big picture perspective. How are things going to change over the course of the next 10 years with AEW still in the picture? How are companies like WWE going to adapt and adjust to AEW? Are they going to be a similar way like they did with WCW in the late 1990s? Will there be a counterpunch? We talk about all of that and more on The Good, the Bad, and the Hungy every week on the Voice of Wrestling Network.
Memorial Day doorbuster deals are here at Lowe's. Right now, Rewards members save $80 on the Master Forge 4-burner gas grill, now just $149. Plus, Rewards members save $900 on the Lowe's exclusive Hisense French door refrigerator, now only $999. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 5/26. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at Lowe's.com/terms. Subject to change.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to finger down. Dance tonight together. Hear everyone is singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for May 27th, 2025. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed on all podcast platforms and applications. You can find us on social media at Open Voice Gate. And if you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. Click the red box that says sponsor this podcast, and you can set up a one-time or recurring donation. No obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joined alongside the beating heart of a Pacers nation right before an all-important Game 4 happening tonight. K-Slow, how are you doing? What's your mental state at? Are you ready for the chaos that's going to happen in about 5 hours?
I really wasn't sure where that intro was going. That was quite exciting. We are moving up our podcast recording time. We normally record at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time and, go about 2 hours, but that would take up a large chunk of the Pacers-Knicks game tonight. And I was telling Mike, had the Pacers not blown a 20-point lead in Game 3 and had they been up 3-0 on the Knicks heading into tonight, I would have been glad to record a voice gate because I would have liked to have been on record saying that, including our friend John Hernandez, who I love dearly, who writes for voicesofwrestling.com. He is a Knicks fan, but including John Hernandez, I hate every Knicks fan. I hate that awful city. I hate that awful franchise. Fuck Fat Joe. Fuck Spike Lee. This Knicks team is so unlikable. They have me saying, and I will apologize for this in advance, they have caused me to say fuck Edie Falco because she was sitting front row at Game 2. And I'm sorry, but if you're a Knicks fan, this is not going to be the podcast for you. I think that team is completely fraudulent. And hopefully by the time everybody hears this, the Pacers are up 3-1 heading back to New York and not 2-2, because I'm feeling good right now, but that's because every NBA playoff series the Pacers have played in this year, they have won the first 2 games and then lost Game 3. History repeated itself in this Knicks series. If the Pacers lose Game 4 tonight, I'm going to be extremely upset. I'm not going to handle that great. So to answer your question, how am I doing? A lot going on, Mike. Thanks for asking.
I mean, have y'all banned Alex Pillow from showing up again? I mean,
Look,
that might have been the bad
notice-
luck charm.
I couldn't help but notice that, the one time we had the Indy 500 runner front row, it was the game that we lost. Again, not saying it's his fault, but just something to take note of there. So yeah, there's a lot on the line tonight. It does very much, when you're a Pacers fan, feel like it's us against the world. It feels like, despite being an objectively very fun basketball team to watch, it feels like the NBA would be mad at us if we made the finals, because they seem to have an inability to market any team that isn't the Knicks or the Lakers. I would say the Celtics, but I don't even think they can market the Celtics properly anymore. So I don't know what.
No, they let Bill Simmons take care of the marketing for them with that.
Bill does an all right job. Ringer, if you're hiring, let me know. I've got a resume. But it's just, yeah, there's a lot of feelings going on with this series. It's been great basketball. I thought the officiating in games 1 and 2 was really solid. I did not love the officiating in game 3, but I'm not saying that's why we lost. It's just, one of the things with basketball is every once in a while you're going to get a really poorly officiated game. But look, we can only hope that Halliburton has his jump shot tonight, that Siakam continues to make shots, that Aaron Nesmith is healthy. So by the time most people hear this, there's a very good chance that none of that happened. The Knicks have tied the series, and I'm going to be in a world of hurt. But again, wishful thinking, manifesting, if you will, being present in this moment. We are hoping that the moment is that the Pacers are going to win Game 4 tonight.
Man, I'm just hoping for the moment that the Rangers start hitting above the Mendoza line. So I'd rather be in your situation with your current sport fan.
Yeah, but then you flip over to baseball, and then you realize that White Sox, better than they were last year, still not good though.
They were giving the Rangers huge fits this last series. Which, by the way, the Texas Rangers have the best rotation ERA in all of the American League and the worst batting average.
That's tough. That's very Pittsburgh Pirates of you.
I know. I mean, the only difference is that instead of scaring off a fan base, they're trying to convince the Rangers fan base that they need to go to all-in on July 12th.
Did you see, not to turn this into baseball corner, because we literally have so much to talk about, but did you see the thing from Barstool, which I know it's a horrible way to start a sentence because the answer should be no, but sadly I see this stuff come across my timeline. Did you see the thing from Barstool about how the Tigers need to trade Tarek Skubal because they'll never win without him, was their logic, even though they have the best record in all of baseball right now?
I don't even know who Barstool has for baseball, because
I had the same thought.
Don't they have Ben Verlander as their baseball guy? Isn't that their deal?
I don't know. I had never seen a baseball tweet, and this was a blog post. This looked like it was somewhat long form, and it didn't look like anything that Barstool has produced in the last 5 years, nor does it seem like something they would be interested in. But they had the real hot take of the Tigers, despite being the best team in baseball, should trade the best pitcher in baseball because for some reason they'll never win with him. It was very, very odd. It was, very poor sports analysis.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if that's a planted article,
I guess, something.
And who would plant an article of Barstool Sports in 2025?
Well, I would normally agree with you, but the reach and influence they have should terrify everyone. I live it every day. It's something else.
No, but I don't know if I was an agent. I guess I would try to launder through Barstool Sports if my player is unhappy, I guess. But that's wild considering best record and all of that. I don't know.
The thing with Barstool, you have to remember, the people that are going to log on to Barstool and be like, man, this is awesome, are the dumbest people possible. So
the most easily manipulated.
So you're sitting pretty there. It's actually kind of the perfect website to do something like that with.
Yeah, but we don't always talk about those dark arts here, case.
No, we have. I know we haven't talked about Dragongate, you and I. We haven't talked about these shows that we've watched, but I think we have very good Dragongate stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we do, because Dragongate had one of their semi-annual triple shots up in Sapporo and Hokkaido from the 23rd through the 25th. And let me tell you, not going on to like another wrestling thing, what a breath of fresh air was it to have 3 tight 2 hour and 15-minute shows to watch that were all a whole bunch of fun, even though they need to get tenting paper for windows so it doesn't look completely blown out on camera.
Look, this is in reference. Mike and I were talking about this. We were talking about the runtime of Double or Nothing, which
6 hours.
Look, I still think Tony Khan's biggest flaw is the way they pace these pay-per-views. That being said, Double or Nothing 2025 might be the single most enjoyable AEW pay-per-view I've ever watched. It was the first time that I felt like the pacing didn't really get to me. Now, I was also paying attention to Pacers Knicks during the first half of that pay-per-view, so maybe that helped. But with so much wrestling to watch, i.e. one show over the weekend, it was nice to also get these Dragongate shows. There were 3 shows, but they were all very succinct, did not overstay their welcome, and especially shows 2 and 3 I thought were very fun.
Yeah, I felt like that for what they were trying to accomplish on these tours that in past Dragon Gates would be often full of tournament matches, or they would have something to really cash in on Hulk and KZ being both Hokkaido natives and this being like their big hometown celebration. And instead, what we got, Case, I would say, at least for me, you had some killer main events across all 3 nights. But what really beat to beat, show to show, what you got was a real strong build leading up to the doubleheader in Korakuen on June 4th and 5th. And really a lot of stuff there working in service of the title matches that we're going to have, as well as, kind of continuing some storylines. A couple storylines feel a little adrift right now, but that might be because of Best of the Super Juniors. But I thought just overall, this was a absolute blast of a triple header that they had up in Hokkaido last weekend.
I think they're all good shows, not great shows. I think we've seen the Hokkaido weekends peak a little bit higher in the past, but a lot of stuff that I really liked on these weekends. I'm curious, your comment there on the storylines, is that D-Courage related?
Yeah, because I felt like that without getting into too much spoilers related things, they really hit on the Dreamgate program. Like that was the constant thing throughout the shows. You got to see more of, at least in Dragongate, you got to see more Kakuta and Z-Brats. You're building up the Triangle Gate match. At least you set a Triangle Gate match. You've built up Junior and UT, and all the while you kind of have Ryoya Tanaka and Yuki Yoshioka, who are just kind of adrift this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I have a larger Yoshioka conversation that I want to have as we go throughout the set of shows here, but there's no Daya there, and that story is much more of a Yoshioka and Daya story than it is a Yoshioka and Tanaka story. So I get that. It's not one that I would say is a cause for concern yet for me, though.
Yeah, and I think it just really was that you had so much other stuff kind of being built up and carrying over from the earlier May shows case, and the one kind of loose thread, but we knew it was going to be a loose thread because of Daya and Super Juniors was going to be that D-Courage fallout there. It just kind of worked out that way, and that's not to say that I thought that those 2 guys were bad on these shows. It just that was the only storyline that did not progress throughout the weekend.
How much of Daya in Super Juniors have you seen?
A lot more in the early tournament, but as we got closer to the end of the month and with other stuff going on, my Best of the Super Juniors viewing has gone a little bit more downhill lately, to be honest.
Did you watch the Hiromu match?
That is the first match I've not watched out of his. I've watched everything before that.
Okay, the Hiromu match is really good, and I'm only surprised by that because Hiromu had that match and then the Francesco Akira match, and that was the one right before the Daya match. I didn't think I could care about a Hiromu singles match at the level that I cared about those 2 matches at. The Akira match is even better than the Daya match, but the Daya match I went 4 1/4 on and was really impressed by both guys in that match. That works out nicely because I just mentioned Francesco Akira. The Kosei Fujita match, because we'll talk about all of these guys here in a little bit when we talk about 30 under 30. The Daya Kosei Fujita match that happened in Hyogo is really good. It's not the high-end epic style match that the Hiromu match was, but it was a really nice, compact 10-minute match that I thought showcased the best of what Fujita can be and the best of what Daya can be, especially the best of Daya working underneath. So those are the two of anything that you've missed. I would watch the Hiromu match and I would watch the Fujita match, and then maybe the Robbie X match. That's kind of if you have time, but I would deem Hiromu and Fujita as essential.
Sure, yeah, no, and those are right up next for it. But I think if we want to talk like spoiler-free stuff on the showcase, what'd you have written down as your best stuff from Sapporo?
I'll go show by show here because I've obviously got recommendations from all three shows. And then at the end, please tell me if you have anything that I don't. But on the May 23rd show, I would recommend only one match. It would be Bendito and Luis Monte versus Ryoya Tanaka and Yuki Yoshioka. On the 5/24 show, I would recommend Don Fuji, Dragon Kid, Toru Washi, and Ultimo Dragon versus Benkei, Hyo, Jackie Kame, and Rita. And then also Mochizuki Jr. and Yamato versus Masaki Mochizuki and Yuti. And Kota Minoura, Madoka Kakuta, and Shun Skywalker versus Flamita, KZ, and Strong Machine J. And on the final show of the weekend, I would recommend the final three matches, which were Flamita and Luis Monte versus Kame and Rita, KZ versus Yoshioka, and BB Hulk, Dragon Kid, and Susumu Yokosuka versus Jason Lee, Madoka Kakuta, and Shun Skywalker.
So I'm just going to work backwards just because of my short-term memory. I would co-sign that the top three are the ones worth watching on the 25th. On the 24th, I ended up really liking the opener. I thought that Yoshioka, Tanaka, and Haraguchi versus Kai Ishin and Jason Lee worked like at a pace for an opener, and Genki kind of playing into it is worth it. But really, the build tag and then the main event there. I thought that my favorite match kind of the weekend, though, was the main event from the first night. I really enjoyed Natural Vibes versus Paradox up there, and those were that was kind of like the easy best thing I would say during that show.
That's very interesting. That is a match that I went 3 3/4 on. Obviously enjoyed it, but I thought the other two main events were a little bit stronger.
Yeah, no, all the main events I was notebook on just for that, as well as Kame and Jack versus Flamita and Monte.
Was that your match of the weekend?
My match of the weekend, as I'm like looking through it, is probably going to end up being actually, you know what other match on night 3 I would say is worth watching? Mochi Fuji versus Yamato and Kage.
Yes, I felt like it was the lesser of the Mochizuki Yamato matches, but also
fair.
It was good.
I think my match of the weekend would have been the Natural Vibes versus Z-Brats from night 2 main event. The more I think about it.
I would go Paradox Z-Brats from night 3, but the Flamita Monte, Kame, and Rita match, I thought it was better than their Korakuen match in December, which I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but anyways, really strong stuff.
I think that's a really hot take because I was only 4 on the Kame match.
I did not go notebook on the Korakuen match. I went 4 1/4 on that one. Again, not to get ahead of ourselves, but spoiler-free match recommendations there. I mean, through the span of 3 shows, there's a lot there to watch. And it's a lot with different guys. You know, you see Bendito's name in the mix. You see what I thought was an elite tier touch football match with Fuji and Awashi and Ultimo and Dragon Kid against Gold Class. And then, you know, the Road to title match on 5/24 with Junior and Yamato against Mochizuki and Yuti. And you see the strong Z-Brats main events as always. You know, Minoura, Kakuta, and Shun on 5/24. And then Kakuta, Shun, and Jason Lee on 5/25. Just a lot to like there.
Yeah, and especially with the idea that these tours, you know, they are as like they only bring so many people on those tours to make out the cards, and I felt like that at least really with as pared down as you get without having Daya around to like add to it, just like real strong core Dragongate like throughout the shows, and I think like that was kind of one of the more refreshing things about this was like you would get in there and like you would even you would have a fun opener and then like it's that incredible touch football match, and then before you know it you get a little change of pace with Bendito and Luis Monte, and it just was just a way that the combinations sometimes on these tours, not that they get bad, but there's only so much you can do with the parts and the puzzle pieces that you have. But this year it felt like at least this half of the Sapporo shows, real strong effort all throughout.
I think the thing that jumped out to me the most was the cohesiveness of what I'll label the Road to matches. You know, obviously the big preview that they had on the middle show with Mochizuki and UT against Yamato and Junior, but then again to continue that on the final night with the opening match that had UT and Mochizuki Jr. across from each other, and then, like you mentioned, the Mochi Fuji versus Kagatora and Yamato match from that same show. Obviously, given what we know about the June Korakuens, and we should get that full lineup here any day now. Probably it'll come out right after we're done recording, but just from what we had, all of those title matches and then the Despy match, I was very excited for these Korakuens coming in, but I really liked the way they handled those matches. And I think my big takeaway from the weekend is just how excited I am for the Korakuen shows here in June.
Yeah, no, because what all that they did, and especially the Mochi Yamato stuff, I was chomping at the bit for the Dreamgate match, especially with the interplay that these two guys had throughout the weekend. Like, it's always been a thing that Masaki Mochizuki and Yamato never really are friends. They never really work well with each other. So the fact that they're building up this kind of main event match for these shows and having it so much that, like, just looking at like the double preview match, like, you could have very easily done Mochizuki's versus UT and Yamato, but like and we know that match would have been solid, but like the combinations of, okay, you're having Junior with Yamato and then UT with Mochi just makes it kind of fascinating, and it's a lot more of an intriguing kind of proposition than you would have had the other way around.
Well, it makes sense canonically because as we're seeing this downward emphasis with Mochizuki Dojo right now because of the Sahara injury and because Daiki's not on the road right now as they get ready to repackage him, and Fuda's not here on this tour. So canonically it makes sense because Junior's talked about how much he hates Mochizuki Dojo and how Junior also doesn't want to be the guy that teams with his dad. So it made sense in storyline. It made for a really interesting match on paper. For those that haven't seen it, I guess we'll put our spoiler guard up here because I do want to talk about the finish specifically, which is UT and Mochizuki Jr. have this excellent back and forth. They have great chemistry throughout this match.
UT had some hate.
UT had some hate. Junior is able to bring it. Again, that's kind of sort of the thing that really intrigues me with Junior, which we'll talk about when we get to the 30 under 30 stuff, is just the fact that this guy, for being so young and about to hit the 3-year point of his career, it always seems like he's able to rise to the occasion. And for the first few months of this year, and we talked about this at length about how 2025, the first 5 months of this year, they've kind of been the least productive months of Junior's career while he's been healthy, because he has been healthy. He's been on every show, but it's kind of the first time that we've seen him not have something immediate to do. He's not feuding with Ishin. He's not feuding with Kato. He's not feuding with his dad. He's not teaming with anybody on a regular basis, outside of just whatever gold class combination that he's in. So it's been very interesting to see him slip down the pecking order a little bit. And then sure enough, at the May Korakuen show, they heat him up, and then you see him here with UT, and you're like, oh, that's why I'm completely infatuated with this kid. He always seems to rise to the occasion. So they have great chemistry throughout the match. They bail to the floor, and then you get this really physical, really stiff sequence between Mochizuki and Yamato that I would say you don't really see a lot of this anymore. And I think 10 years ago, I think 15 years ago, the level of hate that was on display between those two would be a little bit more prevalent in Japan. It's not there all the time right now, but Mochizuki and Yamato have this great super stiff sequence, and it ends when Yamato hits a brainbuster on Mochizuki and he goes for the pin. But when he goes for the pin, he stomps on Mochizuki's chest and does a 1-foot pin on Mochizuki. Mochizuki then kicks out at one, springs to his feet, backs Yamato into a corner, and then at that point totally snaps. He won't stop hitting him. Referee tries to get involved. Mochizuki hits the referee DQ. So it is in a sense a flawed old school TNA DQ'd for kicking too much ass type of finish, which I was really disappointed by. But I also think it was so incredibly effective in the sense that it was a good reminder of, hey, we're not just getting two old guys that want to go out and play the hits in their Dreamgate match. There's real fervor and real intensity to what they're about to do in Korakuen.
Yeah, and I think that you, in this kind of program and the build for it, coming out of Mochizuki kind of just going like, well, I conquered the Johnny Dragon. I deserve a title shot. And then it suddenly turns real in a way, in a manner. I adore that as like kind of a set of booking, and like in the match where you really got to go to different levels until that moment that Yamato probably goes just a step too far, and then Mochizuki snaps. They cut promos on each other afterwards, and then that leads right into the 525 tag where we got Mochi Fuji in this economy going up against Yamato and Kagetora, where you really had more, it picked off right where it was from the night before, but this time you kind of have the two guys bringing their best friends as backup, and they're just going to like get fed up and start slapping the shit out of each other. And that time Yamato gets DQ'd for stomping Mochizuki out, and we got more promos to build from it, and this match has to happen immediately because this is the exact amount of hate that I feel like having this kind of match after Yamato has been doing kind of the generational battles, like kicking into this and it suddenly having a lot of heat to it is exactly what I feel like that this kind of program could use before, like with the idea that this is not going to be your Kobe World Dreamgate program, but to build it up for like 3 weeks, I'm chomping at the bit. I feel like I've said that 4 times already.
Well, I mean, maybe this is a dumb question, but I think it's worth asking just momentarily. Of the percentage of chance that you think Mochizuki could leave Korakuen as Dreamgate champion?
I mean, it's Mochizuki, so he has a puncher's chance.
That's kind of my point. Yeah.
Yeah, but like for a Mochizuki's puncher, the fact that it's Mochizuki, the puncher's chance is a little bit better, but I just can't see them doing that kind of thing. So I would put it at under 20%.
Okay, I would say about 10%. So we're on the same page there. But it does, again, it was sort of refreshing to see this build, because I think they could have run Yamato versus Mochi and Korakuen and said, okay, the build is that it's Yamato versus Mochi and it's happening in Korakuen, which I think is the first time in 15 years that match has taken place in this building, not since 2010 during Yamato's first run. And they could have just, they could have laid it out on a platter and said, well, what else do you want us to do? It's this match and it's happening in this building. Buy your ticket or don't. But I really do feel a sense of energy in that Dreamgate match now, given what we saw in Hokkaido. Again, just really, really physical. It goes back to, the Valletta match that Mochizuki had. And I referenced both in my written review and then again on here, where there's the one spot where Valletta hits the King Kong knee drop, and right before he can do the pin, he leans down and Mochizuki hits him across the face with the right hand, and they both collapse. And it was a moment of Mochizuki brilliance. It's why he is one of the 10 greatest wrestlers of all time. It's why I'll be voting for him in the Observer Hall of Fame this year, even if I think it's a lost cause. But the entire build with Yamato across these two shows, the second one and the third one, they had that feeling of like, oh man, that Mochizuki A still has it, and B, while he has it, he continues to bring it in ways that feel super fresh and super unique.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that really intrigues me, is that we know the brilliant wrestling mind that he has, and you now have this heated build. You have a champion who's on his career-defining run, and it just seems like that it has all of these really intriguing bits that's going to really pay off next week. I mean, like, these are kind of the things that if we were drawing like out of hats to like randomly book a show, we're like, okay, we're going to do a Yamato, and we pull Yamato Dreamgate title defense, and where it's going to be? It's going to be in Korakuen. And who is it going to be against? Masaki Mochizuki. It's the best possible combination. Like that, and I feel like they're playing their hand exactly how you'd want to going into a match of that type.
Do you feel leaving this weekend, you have a better idea of what the Kobe World main event might be?
No, because I still feel like that the Shingo option's out there. Like it's that there's been no real direction. I feel like.
I'm not saying this is something that I want, nor do I think that's something that's going to happen. Is there a play there for Yamato versus Despy?
I mean, I feel like Yamato versus Despy, the question of in that building versus what you could be doing instead. right? Because do I think that that's a unique enough draw to kind of do a Dreamgate shot? Yeah, but I don't know for World Memorial Hall if that's what I would want to do, given the opportunity to get into the New Japan roster for that. I would be going with a tried and true, and I would be going with Shingo for that reason. But it's interesting enough seeing how much Despy will be there the next week. I just it just feels kind of weirdly out of place. Like it's like, yeah, Despy's on a great run right now. He is one of those draws, but like I don't know why it feels kind of fuzzy in my head, the idea of Despy versus Yamato feeling wrong as a Kobe World main event, but I just can't shake that feeling, I guess, with that idea.
Would you be satisfied if it was Yamato versus Minoura, but second from the top was KZ, Jay, and Flamita against Shun, Kakuta, Homare?
No, because it's Minoura.
Okay, that's kind of where I'm at as well. God, it's it's so interesting that they already did the KZ match, because I feel like that's your failsafe, that you could run Yamato versus KZ a World, and I think enough people could care about it. You can't go back to...
You don't have that card up your sleeve anymore. I guess technically the card would be Shun, but then you would have to put the belt on Shun.
And if we've talked about that enough with Jay to where I'm convinced... I mean, now we're 6 weeks away from World, because it's an early July World this year. Now you get the July Korakuen before, whereas last year World happened, or I think 2 years ago, World happened before the July Korakuen. So you have 3 Korakuen shows, but I don't really want that for Shun.
It's a weird setup with the with World being on the 13th. Yeah,
because I don't feel like, and I guess we can talk about this now. We've got this on our run sheet a little bit later, but we can hit it here and cross it off. But this Yoshioka thing is very odd, and
it feels like it's going to be long and pronounced.
And maybe that is just because we saw him wrestle 3 matches and Daya wasn't anywhere near, and so obviously they can't progress that story when Daya is not near. But I'm a little worried about him, because he's now been back for 3 months. He returned in March. We saw him wrestle a bunch of Rey de Parejas matches that were all good, and we sort of gave him the benefit of the doubt, this life-altering injury. And it was like, okay, all right, well, it makes sense that he didn't hit the ground running, but let's see what's going on. And then we got into April, and he had the really good D-Courage versus D-Courage match in Kobe, even if I thought that was largely carried by the work that Kakuta did. And then a week later in Osaka, there was the Daya and Yoshioka versus Minoura and Skywalker match that I really liked, but it was sort of a Z-Brats formula match, which, as we'll talk about with these main events, incredibly successful formula they've built upon themselves. He gets his head shaved, and I'm not buying Yoshioka right now. I don't think it's a lost cause, but they certainly haven't done enough image-wise, rehab-wise, for me to say, this guy got his head shaved at May. I now want to see him wrestle for the belt in July. The hurdles they would have to clear in June for that to be realistic seem insurmountable, and I felt like that should have been at least an option, and we should have had maybe a more legitimate conversation, or we should have been able to have a more legitimate conversation about that around this time and into June. But that feels totally lost, and I guess the question is, are you worried about Yoshioka short-term, long-term, or not at all?
I think that it's now pretty clear that he's going to be downcycled for a while. Like, it just, the way that everything is kind of setting up is that he's very clearly not at that step yet. Like, he has not gotten that final step yet back to where he was in 2023. And it makes me think that this is going to be a lot more long-term thing. Like, frankly, at this point, I feel like if I'm doing a 6 months too early prognostication, it does kind of feel like that they're going to slow build him until King of Gate, and that's going to be an opportunity to kind of pull him out of that and then finally have him kind of pushed out. But I feel like that we're seeing, like, okay, he came back. It was not a success, like in character, not a success. And then it that lack of success leads to kind of him losing his hair, and then ultimately whatever's going to happen to Decourage. I feel like that there's like these steps out along the way that now, well, he's not at the bottom, basically. And it's some of that is because Daya is not around this month, and some of that is that this is going to be a lot longer kind of deal with him. So I think it's a real long-term play. I don't sell off anything really with him like as a wrestler. I just think that it's an instance of that the booking to get him reestablished is a lot more long-term than just 2 months, I feel like now.
So circling back to the Dreamgate, because I completely agree with you on Yoshioka there, and I don't have anything else to add. Although I continue to be a little alarmed by, I'm going to sound like Joe Lanza here, but my take on Yoshioka has always been I don't understand the charisma disconnect. I've never understood the complaint of Yoshioka not having charisma until he got his head shaved, and short hair Yoshioka is not connecting with me in the slightest. So I'll leave it there on Yoshioka for now, and I'm open to obviously him winning me back over. But to go back to the Dreamgate conversation at World, this is going to be slightly painstaking, but I'm going to go slow here. So it can't be Strong Machine J because that's not a Kobe World main event. They've already done KZ. It can't be Shimizu. He's not wrestling. It's not going to be UT. It's not going to be Flamita, although, God, would I love to see a Flamita Dreamgate match right now. To move to Gold Class, I don't think they're going to do Ben at World for the second year in a row. It's not going to be Hyo, but I would like to see Yamato versus Hyo in a Dreamgate match. I would also like to see the same for Kame. It's not going to be Kame. It's not going to be Rita. It's not going to be Junior. Is Yamato versus Daya? Well, Yamato beat Daya, though. I don't feel like that's
Yeah,
back
I don't think
in play.
Daya is. Yeah, no, I feel like Ben and Kakuta are the two people that Yamato has faced, if you want to say like him taking the belt and then defending it, are the two that are viable as retreads, not a Daya right now.
God, I'm intrigued by Daya, though. That would be really interesting. But I
That'd
don't,
be a huge vote of
think they're going to do.
confidence.
I know, but it's like I feel like Daya has earned that within the confines of Dragon Gate. I continue to talk to New Japan fans, some of whom are like, yeah, he's been good, some of whom never gave him a chance and they're not into it, which is fine. It's not, I don't care about that necessarily, but I do feel like in the confines of Dragon Gate, if you timed a Daya thing just right, you could get away with that. Something strong would have to be underneath, but on the pie chart that is possible Dreamgate matches at World, I feel like you have to dedicate a sliver to Daya.
No, I don't think you could eliminate him right now at all.
What about Doi? That's the one I keep on going back to in my head.
I just don't. I mean, is Doi treating Dragon Gate like his like preferred kind of promotion? He's basically at a point where, I mean, he's doing an independent Nara show this year, man. I don't think that they're going to put him in the main event. Like he seems more like he's going full freelance than he is going to be doing a Dreamgate run to me.
But can't you get a little brother payday to headline World and do a job there?
But he's interesting because like in theory it should work. Right? Like
even in the same unit, I feel like they could, which I guess is funny because when they wrestled they had a Dreamgate match when at the end of 2016. I guess they weren't.
Yeah, it was right when Doi got kicked out of Berserk and he was independent until
it wasn't
Maximum.
It wasn't same unit, but it was babyface at that point. Because I remember the dynamics of that match being a little weird. So they would be risking the same thing, but also it's been 5 years since Doi has wrestled in a Dreamgate match, since Memorial Gate Wakayama 2020. It is an option.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the ones that I feel like would be one of those like 1% slivers, but like I can't discount it because there is like enough rationale to make it make sense for Doi. But it's just I don't know if the freelance trappings kind of take him out of that when they in this kind of scenario.
I think the more I have this conversation, the more it's just going to be Shun versus Yamato, because Shun's not in the title match on the 4th. and he's in the Despy match on the 5th, which seems ripe for Ishin taking a fall. And then you've got the Shun Dragon Kid thing, which leads into Shun Paradox, and that just I feel like we're leaving next week with Shun versus Yamato at World being the match. I feel like I've talked myself into that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're keeping it within the roster, that's the match, basically.
Yeah, and I don't
really...
I don't grasp the Shingo thing in the same way that you do. So I don't feel like it's that. And it's weird. I would be disappointed if that was the move there. I love when Shingo
it is kind
stops
of old
by.
hat.
Yeah,
it is kind of old. Yeah.
I like when Shingo stops by. I like Shingo doing tags. I don't need him to challenge for a title.
Yeah. I guess my whole mindset and why that is still at play is it's still Shingo Takagi in that building, but you know, it just kind of like the reason why you go like, oh, just go Shingo is basically because other than Shun, there's just really not a plan, a guy on the roster that you feel like within 6 weeks the build will be there for.
Other than Kakuta, because I do feel like they've nailed the presentation of Kakuta, and you have to give him credit. I thought he had a really strong champion carnival. I caught up on the relevant stuff from that run. I think I said this on the show 2 weeks ago, but Kakuta versus Anzai was a mind-blowing match to me, and it was a good reminder of how much I like Anzai, and that's one of my favorite matches I've seen in Japan this year, period. So I really liked that. But then you see the way Kakuta's presented.
He just fits in Z-Brats too.
It really works, and it's just funny to see this guy who, throughout the 5 years that he's been around now, there's been so many questions and he missed an entire year. And, you know, it feels like a lot of Kakuta's career has been us going, what is this guy? And then he has this perfect build of the Dreamgate belt, and then he wins the Dreamgate belt, and I feel like the booking really left him hanging. And so even as Dreamgate champion, we're going, what is this guy? What is he doing? Something doesn't feel right, and man, does it feel right in Z-Brats. I mean, I was completely blown away by how good he was on 524 and 525.
Yeah, it really feels like, in its own kind of way, that Kakuta, and we need to like mind erase that Kakuta was always the number 2 in Z-Brats. And it feels like actually at a time where there was always like conversation of, okay, it's Shun and then like nominally Kai. And then it's like, well, Ishin also does a lot of the talking. And Kota Minoura is treated like a big deal. So is he really the big deal? But man, there is something that when you see Shun and Kakuta like head up that side, and then you can add in others throughout it. I mean, you had them in the opener on 523. And it's like Shun Kakuta with Kai and Jason Lee. That's a lot of fun.
What a winning combination that is.
Yeah, right. And then you're like, okay, how about we take out those two and then run with Minoura as a trio? It's fucking great. It's amazing. And then you have like, okay, we're going to take out Minoura, and now we're going to put back in Jason Lee, and you're going to go up against a Hulk-led Paradox team. And he's just as amazing. It is as if he's always been the number 2 in Z-Brats all along.
They should run on the... 6. Hold on, let me look at the cards here. They should run Kakuta versus Hulk in a singles match on one of these Korakuen shows, and just have Kakuta kill him again. I don't need to see Hulk be competitive, but they should be, as long as Hulk's body can hold up, they should be going out of their way to let Kakuta do the shoulder block spot where Hulk does a 720 bump. They should be doing that as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, and it's probably like my own negative that I'm going to excise. We've kind of reached this point with Hulk and Hulk across this weekend. Like, he has a solid singles match with Susumu, and it's very much not like, okay, we're being careful about this guy. It's almost as if like all of the, okay, Hulk, we have to be worried about Hulk's health, we have to do X, Y, and Z. He's just kind of like reached this point of like, this is what we have from Hulk, and it's generally pretty good, and it's a little bit of a surprise just because we can contrast what all we've seen him go through. And yeah, no, I want Hulk versus Kakuta, and I want Hulk to do as many spin bumps as possible as long as you're able to do it.
It goes to something that I've said for the last year, which is that we have to be so incredibly thankful that Paradox as a unit is as good as they have been. We have to be so thankful that Paradox is Yamato on the run of his lifetime. Dragon Kid, when he's been healthy, has been great. Susumu is Susumu. There's nothing wrong there. And Kagetora, who went from a no-effort guy to an all-effort guy seemingly overnight in this unit. There's a darker scenario in which Paradox is Yamato and it's Hulk, and then it's some weird like Kanda Owashi Horiguchi punch combination in all of the good work that Hulk is doing, surrounded by the cocoon of this current incarnation of Paradox, is completely wiped away because you're right. They're maximizing what they can get out of him right now because he doesn't need to lead the unit. That's Yamato's job. He doesn't need to be the workhorse. That's Susumu. Doi and Kid bring all of this charisma and all of the star power. And then Kagatora's there working his ass off. And so when you eliminate all of those positions from what we recognize as a really strong unit, Hulk can go out there and just be effective in small doses, which is all his body can do at this point. And man, I'm just so impressed with how much they've gotten out of Hulk during this run.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And on a weekend where we've seen them kind of jump through hoops to like make it be like, hey, your hometown guys are really prominent and they're all out here. And this week, like, yeah, they did like a special 20th anniversary match. That was the Susumu one on the 24th. But you had what I felt like was a little bit less of them kind of just getting rammed into the main events at a time. Where
I agree with this. Yes.
Yeah. At a time where like the booking is there, like they're focused more on this, less as a hometown and more on, well, we got 2 nights in Corkin and we need to see as many people as we can get in there. And I think that kind of provides a certain area of like comfort with these shows in a way, because it's not as if Hulk, you're counting on Hulk to do outstanding and tremendous things at this point, but like finding out where he works well, and this week really was an example of that. And then the next night in Hakodate, he can go do that singles match of Katsuo and just do it there and not on YouTube. We don't need that on YouTube. But it just seems like that everything for this weekend worked out really well. And one of the people that, at least for me, Case, that has really cemented his name on the roster in a real short period of time has been Bandito. And Bandito having another kind of interesting weekend of shows. He does a tag with Monte. He has a singles with Monte the next night. And then he is teaming with Ultimo and Tanaka on the 25th. But the big thing we get out of it is that Bandito is teaming with Dragongate and Alpha Wolf versus Ultimo, Flamita, and Luis Monte on the June 5th show. So Bandito really feels like that he's like made his mark so far on this tour.
The 20th anniversary Luis Monte celebration match. Luis Monte, by the way, 33 years old. So do the math on that. Bandito is an interesting one. I thought he looked really good on 523 in the match. It was Bandito and Monte against Tanaka and Yoshioka. And the Bandito Tanaka stuff is what really jumped out to me. And I made the comment in the Voices of Wrestling Discord. I said, from now until a world when Bandito goes home, he should only be at matches with Ryoya Tanaka, because I thought they brought out the best in each other. I felt like the Bandito Monte singles match on 524 was a total disaster. And it was Bandito looking out of place, looking slow, looking clumsy, looking
I
like
felt
a
like
wrestler.
that was a case of a Monte match going way too long, like Monte matches usually do.
There's certainly an element of that where you're right, because the longer the match went, the more you kept on going like, oh, I'm still going. Okay. All right. Well, got to be hitting the finish here soon. Oh, nope, still going. Okay, never mind.
And that happens so much with Monte, I feel like his singles matches don't hit and they go on much too long and they kind of lose themselves.
I think there's truth in that. I was alarmed at some of the sloppiness from Bandito that we don't see that with Monte and any other opponent. So by deduction, look, he could have just had a bad night, but I felt like Bandito got a little bit exposed on 524. And I say all of that to say that he was really good on 523. And then he came back on 525 and he was in the match with Tanaka as a partner and Ultimo against Ijin Kai and Minoura. And I felt like he once again landed the plane. And I was like, okay, that's right. This guy can hang. I have nothing to worry about. I feel like they are setting him up to win. I'm not sure he has made the most of all of the opportunities that he has had so far. Maybe that's unfair. You tell me if it is. I don't feel like if I'm in Dragongate where times are tough and money is tight. Look, Flamita, I would be doing everything I can to rip up this man's passport and keep him in Japan full time. Bendito, if he goes home after World, it would be a scenario right now in which I'd be like, all right, we'll see. We'll earnestly see if we have anything for you in the future, because I think he's been good, but I'm not sure he's been good enough to where I need him on another tour.
I wonder how much of that is where they've booked him, though, because I totally do see your point that there's sometimes, and especially that 524 show match, that just completely, it was the worst match out of everything that we had, to be quite honest. But he's teaming with Ultimo a whole lot. He is, or with like Monte, he's not getting like he's wrestling gold class every time. Like when he's facing Z-Brats, like it's the pair in Z-Brats that are taking the night off, So I wonder, like, because maybe I'm just a little bit higher and I could see, like, okay, if he sticks around, I see these edges getting buffed out a little bit.
And I do as well. I'm not sure, though, that he's done enough in this current tour to warrant that continuation of evolution.
But how much can you really do if you're teaming with Ultimo? You're going to have to work the entire match. You're not going to really be able to get any like teamwork or like super hot tags for you because it's all in service of the guy that's only going to do certain things.
Then maybe that's fair. That's look, I want the guy around. I was talking today. I'm itching for a Toriyama Mexico show, partially just based off of what I saw from Monte and Flamita this weekend, but I would like that to happen. I would like for Bendito to be a part of this family. I don't want him to go anywhere. I hope he sticks around. I am not sure at this point, thinking about how Dragongate operates in the current day, I'm not sure he'd get a second tour if he went home at this exact second.
No, that I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say. And you contrast that with the kind of match you had on 525 with Monte and Flamita versus Jackie Kamei and Rita 2. And it does feel like that he is there as like, and he's getting his tour, and that's great. But we have Flamita at home. We have Monte already here. And there is a little bit of a contrast there, I think it's fair to say.
I am going to be so annoying. I always am. I apologize. But I'm going to be so annoying come December when the SFM 50 panel regroups and we start putting together a list. There are not 50 wrestlers in the world better than Flamita. And I thought that last year, and I lost out on getting him on the 50 list. And I'm going to fight even harder for it this year. He right now is having the same output, and I always vote for these guys because I feel very strongly about this. He's a lot like the TJPs and the Francesco Akiras of the world, in that the sample size of greatness that he has is not always the biggest. But when you see Flamita in a spot to go out and be great, he is so obviously great. This guy, and it's been 1 year. He came back to Dragongate, the Hokkaido tour last year in May. He's done. This is his third tour since his return. He is one of the 50 best wrestlers in the world. Right now, when he's on, he's like one of the 25 best wrestlers in the world, because the main event, which, by the way, is the best rated Dragongate match on Cage Match since 2022, since the Tag Out World with Monte and Shun and Kame and Jason. He was the star of that match. He was the star of this match with Monte and Kame and Rita. He's unbelievable, and he is such a breath of fresh air in this promotion. I'm going to be really sad if he goes home after World, because I believe that's the plan, is for him to go home after World. And if I was Dragongate, I would just be doing everything I possibly could to keep this guy in the country as long as I could.
Yeah, just like moments where, like, what we expect out of Flamita over a decade, which is like his precision point, high flying, someone that is as crisp through the air and with such body control as anyone else in wrestling. But then you have like aspects of this match where it like degraded into a Jackie Kamei Flamita slap fest, and he just starts like teeing off against Jack, and I'm just going, my God. where were you for the last few years? You are like one of like the most like you might not be the cornerstone to build the Dragon Gate house, but you know what Flamita is? Flamita is that stove that always turns on the right way and always heats your pots the right way. It's not too hot. It doesn't take forever to get going, but you take it for granted how good that stove can be when that stove breaks or you go to a different Airbnb and you're trying to cook their case. He is one of the best wrestlers in the world, and we've really seen over the last 12 months back in the home base really what all Flamita can offer, and really to a point that it's now at a state with him that, I mean, when we were talking about Dreamgate matches at World, of course, Flamita does not play into those. It does not figure into like those sorts of decision making. But man, after a year, I'm kind of going like, yeah, why not see Flamita versus Yamato at Gate of Sendai? That sounds like that would be a really fun match to have for Yamato's near hometown fans. Like he's kind of moves his way into that kind of Hyo tier where you're just kind of ready to see what he can do given like the opportunity to do so as like a singles figure in the main event.
Memorial Day doorbuster deals are here at Lowe's. Right now, Rewards members save $80 on the Master Forge 4-burner gas grill, now just $149. Plus, Rewards members save $900 on the Lowe's exclusive Hisense French door refrigerator, now only $999. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 5/26. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at Lowe's.com/terms. Subject to change.
I hate to spend so much time fantasy booking because I know I mentioned the Kakuta versus Hulk thing earlier, but it feels like the move here would be to get the Triangle Gate belts off of Vibes at Korakuen, and then at World you can do Jason and Kota, because I think they're going to retain. You could do Jason and Kota versus Kame and Rita versus Flamita and Monte in a 3-way tag match. That feels like that.
Yeah,
best possible move, right?
Right, yeah.
Because the Shun Hamari stuff, I love the concept of Jason and Kota versus Shun and Hamari at World again. Hamari wasn't on this tour, and so it feels like, again, you would have to do so much heavy lifting at those Korakuens to get that ready for World.
And a lot of the Hamari push hasn't happened in that front of that building, too.
You're right, yes.
So I mean, like, if you had, like, 3 days in Kobe, I'm like, all right, we can make this work here. I don't know if you're going to be able to for him there.
I'm puzzled by the fact that Monte is not just a permanent member of Vibes, just so they could team him with Flamita even more. I mean, I am largely of the belief that it is lazy booking when you have the few Mexicans on your roster teaming with one another, or the few black wrestlers on your roster teaming with one another. Because as Cubs fan has pointed out, he's talked about this in the context of luchadors. Whenever a group of luchadors form a group in an American wrestling company, it never ends up going well for the luchadors. They've never come out on top in any situation. But Flamita and Monte, they don't have chemistry in the sense of, hey, those two Mexicans work really well together. They have chemistry, and they could be a world-class tag team if they had the space to do so, if they had the chances to do so.
Yeah, and you'd also get like fun trios matches with UT in those two.
That's right. And I mean, imagine those guys.
Strong Machine J.
Strong Machine J. It works out nicely. And this is all, it's incredible we're spending so much time talking about Monte and Flamita because they deserve it. And this match in particular, it really made me spend some time thinking about Monte and going like, we all wanted them to take the mask off. They took the mask off. He's clearly had some sort of charisma disconnect since then. But who's an amazing wrestler? Luis Monte. Like, this guy is so good. And that's not even mentioning the gold class guys who I want to talk about here in just a second. But Monte overall, I think we have gone from 2021, 2022, he was severely underrated. 2023, I thought we nailed it. I know it upset some people that he was labeled as one of the 20 best wrestlers in the world, but I think he was at that point. And we've seen his stock plummet ever since, to a point now that I think Monte has once again reached underrated status.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just keeping the eye off the wheel and him just kind of blending in a little bit. But he just, his output there, and especially just the kind of match that they've been putting him in, really feels like that he is someone that's right on that edge of like that top tier of wrestlers working today. Like it's nice to see him get back to that.
I was thinking this past weekend, if he still had his mask on, I think he would be one of the top
15?
candidates. No, I think he'd be one of the top candidates to get recruited under this new AAA TKO nonsense.
Yeah, I could see that, especially with his size too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not huge, but he's still like 6 feet tall.
We've talked about, especially when he was masked, but I think it's even true now. There's always a part of Monte, and I mean, when he went back I don't think he worked when he went back to Mexico last year. I think he just hung out and rested, which he deserved to do. But you and I have always had these conversations of like, man, they should really show off Monte more, but also if they show off Monte, there's a chance that somebody else could want him. It's a double-edged sword there. I think if he was a masked wrestler, I think there would be way more talk about AAA trying to poach him. Now, of course, because it's A, AAA, and B, TKO, and they have no respect for anything going on in Mexico, there is still a chance they're trying to poach him and that they would put a mask back on him. So I don't think that's going to happen. I know nothing. I haven't talked to anybody about that.
And culturally, that would be a taboo, but business-wise would be the right move to do with
They spoiled the main event of the AAA show this week, and they don't care. It's not. It's completely insane what's going on there. But I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. It is something that I think is at least worth mentioning, that he is from Mexico, has succeeded on an international level. Like you said, he has size. And this is a group that's going to be looking to make some noise somewhere, doing something. And I just think we have to be aware of that. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think we have to be aware of that story could come out, that AAA's trying to get him, and it would not shock me.
Right. Yeah. It's just one of those things that within the world of wrestling that I think it does have to be acknowledged. Well, I know you want to talk about the gold class.
Let me mention one more thing real quick. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You were going to say gold class. I was gonna talk about gold class, but I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, we could do this right now, right here. We did get a little bit progression amongst this new shakeup with gold class, with Hio joining throughout this tour, where it really, although it never really came to blows or anything, you have Jack and Rita, and they preserve the gold class name and lineage side. And you have Benkei and Junior on the love and peace side. And on June 5th, they will be doing a tag team match with Hio as the referee, deciding on if they're going to be gold class going forward or love and peace going forward. But that's after a weekend that we got to see a lot of Hio kind of work within the pairings of gold class. Part of that is because you had the junior preview stuff for the Brave Gate. But how was your what were your takeaways on this like first real exposure of Hio working with Ben, Jack, Rita, and Junior?
I don't think this unit can do any wrong right now, and it's why I'm kind of hell bent on the concept of them keeping their name, because I think they finally found a group of 5 individuals that are befitting of the gold class branding, and I think that unit works for them, and I think that branding works for them, and I wouldn't change a thing. I think Hio fit right in, no problems. I really liked what he did. The thing I'll mention away from Hio just quickly about this unit, going back to the Mexico versus Japan tag, I have determined that one of my favorite spots in wrestling is Kame doing the Torbolino and then following it up by not even hitting the ropes and still doing a tope suicida to the floor. Because I believe he hit Flamita with the Torbolino in the middle of the ring and then just ran straight for the ropes where Monte was at and did the dive. And that to me is everything wrestling should be. So gold class continues to do no wrong. I want them to stay as is. I don't need anybody else to join. I don't want anybody else to go away. I think the naming rights thing is a little goofy. I don't love it, but I'm open to where it's going just because I think this unit has been so strong lately.
Yeah, and at the very least, like getting out of this, then we have like this strong unit to build on. So I guess for me, like I would like to keep the gold class trappings just because to keep the lineage, and you still have Rita, an original member of gold class, so there still is that there. I guess like for me coming out of this, like love and peace, whatever, like I don't really have a strong opinion about that as like a unit name. I just kind of, the one thing that does kind of feel like this era of gold class could use a bit of change is that it does feel like the unit coherency, even though arguably they're with their best five that they've had throughout the history of the unit, it does not feel necessarily there as much. I feel like I want, coming out of this next weekend, one way or another, I want all five of them to get like coherent gear, everything to kind of be locked in on point, because you're having these matches where Benkei still has the bad CM Punk yellow gear, and then Jack is showing up with his bad overalls, which doubly got me a little bit into a tiff case, because he wrestled in those bad overalls, but what did he have in his bag the entire time? His tag team pants with with Rita, the Jackie and Rita tag team gear, and he should have just worn that the entire time. So one way or another, I just want to see them to have like some sort of coherence going out of this next week's Korakuen.
Where do you think the match is going? What's the angle here? What are we going to see leaving Korakuen?
I feel like the most Dragongate thing possible is that one side wins and they decide, no, we're not going to be love and peace. Instead, I felt a certain energy in here and we're going to be called to X now. That's kind of what I expect.
I like that. I'm with that. I think that's what they should do.
Yeah, but love and peace, gold class. Like, the other thing about it, if it's love and peace, that means we have to wait like another 9 months for a demo version of their theme music.
I'm staying out of that. I don't want to get caught in any crossfire there.
Yeah, no, but any other thoughts about Hokkaido before we get to 30 under 30?
I'll just mention quickly that I thought Paradox Z-Brats, which closed out the weekend, was the kind of old school Dragongate Trios match that I really liked, because it was long, and I say that complimentary. They did the lariat corner spot with both units that I really enjoyed. It looked like the match was going to go to a no finish, a non-finish, and they continued wrestling and just kind of powered through the referee, hitting the referee, which I was a big fan of. I thought Jason and Kakuta and Shun were so good together as a trio, and I really, really enjoyed that match. For as much as I liked Kame Rita, Flamita Monte, that Z-Brats Paradox match was the match of the weekend for me.
Yeah, I did think that it felt like a 2008 Dragongate match kind of dropped into 2025 in a way.
It just felt like you had a lot of different chapters of that match. A lot of different things were attempted, and I thought they all landed.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I ended up feeling about that first night's match, Natural Vibes versus Paradox. That was my match of the weekend for me personally, but just 3 great shows that they ended up ending that kind of hellish tour that they always end up having, where they go to Okinawa and then they go all the way up to Hokkaido and then do Hakodate before getting back down there. But some really strong work from them on this tour. But Case, we are coming up at a important time on Voices of Wrestling each year. The 3rd annual 30 for 30 will be put together and released over the next week. And you were more involved in the first few years, but this year I've been getting a little bit more engrossed with it. And I know that Jumping Bomb Audio, Kelly had Fred Moreland on to talk about their 30 for 30 kind of considerations and going through the field. But I think that as Dragongate ends up usually having an influence in on this poll, because as you're looking for the 30 best wrestlers under the age of 30, we should probably run through the what Dragongate has on offer for your prospective 30 for 30 under 30 voter and talk about our overall 30 under 30 lists.
So one of the things that I wanted to do this year, I guess to sort of get out in front of it, because I get a little put off by lists that come out from our website, which is great, and for some reason there is pushback by people that don't watch Dragongate about how many Dragongate guys are on the list. And I get it. I've been critical at the times about the way Joshi's been represented in certain things, but I also have come to accept that I don't watch Joshi. Maybe you shouldn't have a super big opinion on this, but I think the reason that there's so much Dragongate representation in 30 under 30 is that of the male companies in Japan, because Stardom's on a whole other level. Their roster is insane in terms of the amount of women they have under 30. But in terms of the male Japanese companies, they have so many more wrestlers under the age of 30 than New Japan or Noah or All Japan. And they're all spread throughout the card, which I think is really important for a project like this, because you're mixing in, at least the way that I vote is I mix in who the best wrestler is with a little bit of star power and a little bit of potential. And when I look at potential for something like 30 under 30, I am factoring in, as long as they're eligible, do I think they'll be on the ballot every year they're eligible? And do I think they'll be in a better position at this time next year than they are now? Which is why you get some of the rookies and some of the young boys on my ballot and on other people's ballots. That's the way that I look at it. And so when this project got unveiled behind the scenes of Voices of Wrestling this year, I went ahead and I broke the Dragongate roster of wrestlers under 30 into 3 different groups, which were main eventers, which is Dragon Dia, Hyo, Ishin, Kota Minoura, Madoka Kakuta, and Shun Skywalker. Mid-carders, which would be Jackie Kame, Mochizuki Jr., Rita, Ryoya Tanaka, and Yoshiki Kato. And then rookies, which would be Akihiro Sahara, Daiki Yanagiuchi, Homare, and Ryo Fuda, with an unknown age for Strong Machine J. I have made the decision not to vote for Strong Machine J this year, partially on age, partially I don't think he would have made the list even if I knew that he was 25, let's say. But
yeah, just to jump in real quick, I wrote a whole thing basically talking, at least in our channel, about Strong Machine J, and whereas with his age and when he debuted, there was not as much of an issue. Like, there was just not really any way that he could have been over the age of 30 at that point. Well, we've entered a place where I don't feel comfortable voting for or considering him unless there is a announced age, just because now we're at a place that, at least you look at a Dragongate standpoint, when you look at the big 6 at this point, you're, by this time next year, over half of that big 6, SMJ excluded, would not be qualifying for 30 under 30. And with that, I think that there is judicious logic to lump him in with that and disqualify him from consideration.
So I ask you this as we talk about our ballots this year. I forget, did you do one last year?
I did in 2024. I missed the deadline in 2023.
Okay, but you did one last year. Okay, so I read you these names: Daihyo, Isha Minoura, Kakuta Skywalker, Kame Jr., Rita Tanaka, Kato, Sahara, Yanagiuchi, Homare, and Fuda. Of those names I just mentioned, who are the ones that come to mind as absolute locks? As soon as you sat down to do this, you knew that they were going to be in your final 30.
Well, I mean, I'll just spoiler off here. Shun Skywalker is my number 1 wrestler under the age of 30, and he will be my number 1 a wrestler under the age of 30 until he turns 30. So he was a no doubter. This is actually technically, at least with how the date line is set this year, this will be Shun's last year on the ballot. And I feel very strongly that there's no one in pro wrestling under the age of 30 who has had the level of success he has had, with the idea of that he will continue with that down into the future. He's the most complete wrestler in the world under the age of 30, if not taking away that age caveat to me. So he was a no doubter. Ishin, Hyo, Jackie, and Junior were all ones that were on my ballot last year. They made appearances. Dragon Dia is probably going to be the one where I'm going to be really overvoting him in comparison to everyone else, just because of the fundamental change that happened with him in 2024 and 2025. And then I think after that, when you're looking at your Ritas, Tanakas, and Hamares and Saharas, they figured into my ballot, and they were decisions that were pretty solid to me to consider their inclusion. To me, right now, Yoshiki Kato is just. I think that a lot of his placement, at least within Dragongate, is because of his size, and I think that is covering a little bit for him. Kota Minoura is a non-prospect to me, and I don't feel like that. On Open the Voice Gate, we need to rehash why Kota Minoura is a non-prospect. And frankly, Hamare, I think he's just done enough stuff to really put him over the edge for me. Yanaguchi and Fuda just don't really make rate for me at this level when you take a worldwide field. So that's at least the way I've kind of organized it. Sahara ended up being my vanity pick at 30 because I love the guy.
I'm sure you mentioned him, but I just missed it in the big group of names there. Where are you at on Hyo?
On Hyo, you know, he is like the hardest person. He was the hardest person out of Dragon Gate to figure out where he slotted.
Yeah.
I have him at 16, basically.
Okay, but you've got him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So my Dragon Gate guys who made my ballot in descending order. So this is from highest rated down to the lowest ranked. Shun Skywalker, Dragon Dia, Mochizuki Jr., Jackie Kamei, Ishin, Hyo, Madoka Kakuta, Hamare, Rita, Ryoya Tanaka, and Akihiro Sahara.
Okay, let's do this because part of what I want to do here is I think everybody knows Shun, and I feel like everybody that's going to submit a ballot is going to have Shun. But let's go one by one over the names that you just mentioned and just sort of give an elevator pitch of, hey, here's their deal. So who did you have after Shun?
Dragon Dia is my second highest rated Dragon Gate wrestler.
That is fascinating. That takes you have the floor on Dia because I have more to say on him later, but you take the floor now.
I think that what Dragon Dia did over the June to June window outside of Saya Kamatani has been some of the most transformative work for someone as you look at not only what they are able to achieve in that period, but if we want to talk about like prognosticating and forecasting out, Dragon Dia completely rewrote his narrative over the election window, from going from someone who was the tag team guy who was the first dragon to lose his mask, goes and does Best of the Super Juniors. And is that impressive for New Japan? No, but within the own company, it completely rewrites his narrative, and the company then proceeds to elevate him up into the main event, winning King of Gate and getting his first ever Dream Gate challenge. And with the way that he works and the way that the company views him, the limiter is off with the guy, and he's now very easily could be the first dragon to hold the top title in a Dragon System company. And for me, that is enough to merit a high inclusion for him on my 30 for 30 ballot.
Now, I don't think anybody is going to be rushing to, I don't know if this is still a website anymore. I don't know if anybody's going to be rushing to Rudo Reels to buy the Blu-ray of this Super Juniors tournament so they can rewatch these shows over and over again. It seems like it's been a lot of, hey, a bunch of 3-star matches on this night. Hey, 3.5-star match here. And then, a few high-end things with Fujita versus Kushida. And like I mentioned, Dia versus Hiromu and Hiromu versus Akira. What do you say to somebody that maybe had Dia on the bubble, but then watched him in this year's Super Juniors tournament be good? I would say better than fine, but certainly not great. What is your response to somebody there?
That they should look into what he's doing in Dragon Gate at his home company.
Okay.
I mean, not to be dismissive, I don't mean to be, but I think that if you are solely basing an outsider on that kind of thing, you're not getting the full read of the situation. And I would encourage them to look at the King of Gate final and the build to his match with Yamato. And I think that those are the things that should weigh higher than just being a representative that is not kind of booked necessarily where the parent company sees them, to be honest.
So as of right now, and I'm going to sit on this ballot for another day or two. They're due next week, basically a week from when we're recording this, but I'm going to sit on this for another day or two. As of right now, I do not have Dia on my 30 under 30, with the reason being, I agree with the concept that from June to June, I don't think anybody's rewritten their narrative more than Dia has. I think what he's done has been absolutely incredible. I do feel like this Super Juniors tournament has helped me contextualize him on a global level, where he's a guy that can peak really high. He's a guy that can be focal points of storylines in Dragon Gate, top tier main event level storylines. But when I look at in-ring ability mixed with potential, And the idea of, will Daya be on this ballot as long as he's under 30? And do I think he'll increase his position on the ballot year over year? I am just not sure I'm there. If this was
year over year would be the real tell with him.
It would.
Yeah.
Because right now, if I extend this out to 35 people, he's in. If I extend this out to maybe 32 people, he's in. If I were to see him take a level up, he would be a no doubter in my mind. But as we stand here today, I love Dragon Dai, and I'm just not sure this is the list for him. I think FSM 50. I think he's one of the 50 best wrestlers in the world right now. I think the confines of this ballot are not doing him any favors, and as of right now, I do not have him ranked.
And I think that out of my Dragon System kind of perspective and the way that I'm kind of doing my ballot, I think there's a rationale behind that. Like, I don't.
Your reasoning makes sense, and I think for me, I think what it is right now is I'm convinced we're seeing the absolute best version of Daya that we'll ever see. And if I'm wrong, it makes him a 30 under 30 guy. If I'm right, it makes him a 40 under 30 guy. And that's how close it is with him. He is the guy that I've struggled the most with.
Yeah, because he essentially, like, if you were going to try to elevate a guy, at least in Dragongate, and put the focus on him, he got the whole platinum treatment there. Like, it's very hard to pull off what they managed to do with him and the way that he was able to kind of embody it. I guess, like, the big central difference from my perspective and yours is that I think the limiter is now off for him in the main event card, and you want to see if it ends up that somehow Dragon Daya main evented another Big 5 show this year, that would be the evidence that you would need, I would guess.
Let me put it this way. If we got a normal King of Gate, which means that King of Gate makes tape this year and we get to see all of the block matches, I would need to see output from Daya that would rival Yamato, Shun, Kakuta, Susumu maybe if he's really on. I don't trust that he can always do that. I don't look at cards and my eyes dart to a Daya match and I go, well, that's going to be the best match on the show. And I do that with Shun, and I do that with Kakuta, especially now. And I do that with Rita, and I do that with Kame, and I know I'll be doing that with Tanaka at some point, and I know I'll be doing that with Junior at some point.
I mean, you have done that with Junior.
I have done that with Junior, yeah. But my man continues to deliver in big spots. So I'm left going, okay, he might be a great wrestler, and I might like where he's at now, but he's not a no-doubter. And I also don't trust the potential piece of this, and thus I am sort of removing him from the equation.
Okay, that's fair. My number 3 Dragon System guy on my ballot is Mochizuki Jr. And you want my elevator pitch on him?
I do. I will let everybody know now. Mochizuki Jr. on my ballot, but we'll talk about it. You have the floor.
Yeah, I think that no one else in wrestling, with exception of maybe Hamare, to be quite honest, and I think that there's some in DDT we could see kind of panning out really well too. I just don't really have the track record really for them to say like, oh yeah, no, that it's going to happen with it. There is no surer bet in pro wrestling than on a prospects list like this that Mochizuki Jr. will pay off. If we were talking about this in a baseball perspective, is he going to be an 80 player, using a baseball thing where like the highest rating is an 80 because you're 3 standard deviations above the rest? I don't know if that's the case for Mochizuki Jr., but if there's someone that I know for sure, and he's already put out the work to make me think that this is a guy that will be an occasional champion, like Dreamgate champion, and a top of the line person for the next 9 years or next 8 years he shows up on this list, because he's only 22. I put my money on Mochizuki Jr. before anyone else. I think he's the surest bet still in wrestling. we do have like a topic for him if we talk about the election window, in that what point do you say booking and how you are used affects you. Mochizuki Jr. for a lot of time during this period wasn't necessarily at the is the name at the front of everyone's mind. I mean, there were some tours off with that, but I still think that his match output when he's in the ring with anyone, he shows like in an eerie way. If you watch a Masaki Mochizuki match and then you watch a Mochizuki Jr. match and you take all the names off and you just watch them wrestle, you could see the gears in his mind. They might not work as well as where his dad has gotten to, but you can kind of even see it with him. And yeah, I think he has some of the best physical charisma right now in wrestling. There's no sure bet in the future than to bet on Mochizuki Jr.
The fun thing with Junior is that I've said since the beginning, I think one of the biggest whiffs in wrestling media is that they aren't treating him like a top tier prospect. Like, it's crazy to me that more people aren't going.
When you want to compare and contrast, Hashimoto was treated much more of like a prospect, like after his fall, than Mochizuki's ever gotten the opportunity to as a second generation.
That's partially a legacy media thing. But in terms of the Western bubble, I'm surprised that even people who, because there's a bubble out there that is like, hey, Dragongate's not really for me right now, but I do like Shun Skywalker. I'm surprised that group of people aren't routinely saying, Draggate's not really for me right now, but I do really like Shun Skywalker, and it's obvious that Mochizuki Jr. is going to be a star. Like, they're missing the second part of that in a way that blows me away. And the thing with Junior is I had him ranked 10 last year. I won't have him as high this year, solely because when I look at the names I have ahead of him, they're all people that I think have taken massive leaps in the last year, or people that I had ranked above him last year who have fallen for the same reason. But the thing with Junior, when we had this conversation last year, was, well, he's still so young in his career. Think about what's going to happen when he really starts to figure out the in-ring aspect of it. And you look at the last year, it is the 2 matches with his dad, Masaki Mochizuki. It is the Ishin match from November, which when we talked to Ishin in Vegas, he said that was the favorite match of his career. He had the Yoshiki Kato match that I loved this year. He had the tag match with Ben K versus Ishin and Shun Skywalker for this year. He was a huge part of the May main event, which, like I said, that's the highest rated Dragongate match on Cage Match since July of 2022. From the May Korakuen this past month. He has put together a really strong in-ring resume on top of the physical charisma, on top of the fact that he is just a naturally gifted pro wrestler. In the same way that I think the confines of this ballot maybe hurt somebody like Daya, they elevate somebody like Junior, because like you said, he's 22 years old, and I have zero doubt that for the next 7 years, he's going to be one of the 30 best wrestlers under 30. And I think at some point, he bounced from 10 to, I've got him ranked at 16 right now. I'm sure next year he'll be 6th. The year after that, he'll be 5th. And there's a chance that when this is all said and done, he's the best wrestler under 30 before he turns 30.
Last year, I was a high voter on Mochizuki Jr. at 5. He will not be 5th on my list this year. I still am kind of moving around some of the pieces, but I think he's, I usually do it by like, okay, my top 5, I pretty much figure out straight away. And I go like, who's really in the conversation to be top 10, top 15, and like that. And he's a hard one to kind of figure out. Right now, I have him tentatively at 7, but to be quite honest, I'm looking at some of the names that he's ahead of, and I think I need to bump him down probably to like 11th, to be quite honest.
I guess this is the time to talk about this just from a worldwide standpoint. One of the things I felt last year putting together the ballot was that it was a really weak high-end ballot that 1 through 8, let's say, once you got past Shun and
MJF and Kiyomiya.
Kiyomiya, it was like, oh, okay, what else is there? This year, I think the top 15 are loaded, and my short list was 50 people, and that's not including Joshi, because my rule for this is I'm completely abstaining from Joshi. I don't know the scene well enough. I don't want to tip the scales in one way and go like, oh, well, I know Azumi and I've seen her work and I'm sure she's one of the 30 best under 30, but I don't know the rest of the Stardom roster well enough. I don't want to do that. So I'm completely abstaining from Joshi. Trust me, Joshi's going to be represented in the final poll. I've seen some ballots. Joshi's
yeah. There's some
there.
people that just vote heavily on Joshi. Like, it'll work out. Yeah.
But I'm amazed at what a difference a year makes. The depth from Japan has greatly increased. The depth from the U.S. indie scene has greatly increased. And I'm not going to have a single U.S. indie worker in my 30, and I had a bunch on my short list for my top 50, but those guys all got cut. The depth in AEW has gotten so much deeper. The depth in New Japan, solely because of the juniors division, not the heavyweights, has gotten deeper. And the high-end stuff from Mexico, all of those guys that I voted very highly last year, I think have only improved their candidacy. So it's a very deep ballot. And for that reason, somebody like Junior will fall year over year. Somebody like Kame will fall year over year. Mm-hmm. But to me, there's still no doubt locks.
Yeah, and I do kind of feel like one of my positions in this ballot is to be the person that kind of balances out the people who don't have Dragongate on it. Mm. So I'm okay and I'm comfortable with how I vote. I've seen people like just go vote American wrestlers, and that's their prerogative. I think like when you like look at it like big picture wise, you had a little bit with last year kind of a situation where like Kiyomiya was really at his peak, and I think Kaito Kiyomiya is the hardest person other than Dragon Dia to fill out on this ballot because he is the booking question in of itself. But it's really kind of fascinating to me. I'm looking at right now my tentative top 10, and I am seeing all four of the biggest men's promotions, and I have like representation at least of two other Joshi promotions. And I feel like that there will be someone who will like lay out like an argument for I'm blanking on the ice on like the ice ribbon who someone would pick from ice ribbon, but like there's an argument that someone could very rationally make this year that Suri is the best wrestler 30 under 30. And I think that they have enough rationale to back it up. I think that you could say that for Yuma Anzai, and you could back it up. I think you say that for Ozawa, you could back it up. I think Fletcher is someone that I think it gets a little bit higher rated than where I would, but he still ends up being like second on my ballot. But like where you compare that to last year, when to me it felt like there was only three real answers. It was either going to be like, okay, MJF's going to win this thing, but where is Kiyomiya and Shun going to be? Because that kind of was a very clear tier to me. The entire conversation about top 10 and who it might end up being, I feel like is so much more wide open than it was before.
Okay, after Junior, who do you have?
After Junior, I have Big Match Jack.
Jackie Kame, yes.
Because he is, without a doubt, the one wrestler in the world that if you give him and say like, hey, go all out, that's what I want you to do, and you get him people that are willing to do that with, there is no one across like across maybe the whole world of wrestling that I trust more to go in there and to have a 4.5 star match than Jackie Kame. He has the credits for him. I do think that the thing that hurts him is that this is such a comfortable kind of position for him in the Dragongate roster and in the booking pattern, that being like a top tier tag team wrestler and occasional Bravegate division person does kind of hurt his ceiling a little bit in consideration here. Whereas I think that the three I mentioned previous do not have that ceiling whatsoever when you consider about their final kind of mature landing spot of where they end up being after time,
I think 2025 Dragongate, and really you can extend this back to September of last year, is the best booked this promotion has been since before the pandemic. 2019, I thought the booking was incredibly strong. I think you'd have to go back 6 years to find a promotion that's being booked as well, or Dragongate, since it's been booked as well. My biggest complaint is that I think Kame is still grossly underpushed given his talent. This is a guy who, for the last 5 years, is somebody who has had match of the year after match of the year after match of the year. He is routinely having the best match in Dragongate, if not the world. As we sit here at the end of May, he's in the best Dragongate match of 2025 so far. The main event from the May Korakuen show. It continues to just be massive win after massive win for this guy. And he was my number 3 last year. We were also voting during a time in which it seemed like he was going to be a Dreamgate challenger. That did not come to fruition. His booking was slightly bungled, I would say, in the middle half of 2024. Certainly a blemish on the booking record there. It seems like actually once they figured out to just get rid of Big Hug, that the booking turned around in a rapid way, and here we are now. So Kame will be just outside of my top 10 this year, whereas he was number 3 last year, but a no doubt lock for me.
I can't decide if he's 10 for me or Kohei Fujita's 10.
Yes, that's 2 guys I have listed, but yes, that's a tough one.
Yeah, my next one down my list is Ishin, and I think that outside of Dragon Dia, Ishin has probably done more to raise his stock within the company on 30 out of 30. He was not on my 30 list last year, and I think that his fall and really him embracing his heavyweight kind of role and seeing him like in person execute that, and it is like one of those abilities and one of those things that a lot of people on this list, I feel like that there is like promotional context with. I have seen with my own bare eyes, Case, and you were standing there with me, that you could send Ishin into a show of people randomly from Texas, and he's going to work to the crowd, and he'll have the crowd in the palm of his hands before the end of the match. And it's really hard for me to put much more superlatives. He does not look like your typical Dragongate guy as you would think for this kind of list, but the proof is in the pudding with him. And yeah, I mean, just for the fact that he did not make the list for me last year, he is my biggest mover of the Dragon system this year.
On the cusp of being a top 10 guy for me, I guess if you haven't seen Ishin, I would recommend the 418 Vegas main event. That was the second Dragongate USA show and the singles match with Mochizuki Jr. from last November. But I echo everything you said. He was somebody that I had towards the bottom of my list last year. It's like, hey, you know what? He's been working hard. He deserves it. Let me put him on here. And now he's somebody flirting with the top 10.
My next one is Hyo. And I think that the thing that kind of surprises you is that Hyo is still like 27. Like, he has had this kind of career to this point already. He's 28 because next year will be his 10th anniversary already in pro wrestling. And you're talking about accomplishments. This is a guy that has done virtually everything that there is to do in Dragongate other than win a tournament and win the Dreamgate title. And what we witnessed last year, kind of the reappraisal of Hyo and Hyo ascending to being at times the most popular person in this company, and it hasn't gone away after Big Hug. Like, it is the hidden story of Big Hug is that everyone, as soon as they left the group, they're doing great and fine. And I think that the big thing that's really happened with Hyo over the last, and this goes back into the 2024 period, is he's finally kind of come together in ring as like a singles performer, whereas he was always good in roles in tag team wrestling and trios, and he could lead those tag team matches and trios. What we really have seen is that he has become really a 5-tool player, in that, we're in a situation that Hyo having a Dreamgate shot is not a outright me being a crazy person and just overestimating this guy. That's a real reality in 2025, whereas 3 years ago, we wouldn't even be entertaining this conversation.
I had Hyo at 29 last year, one spot below Anna Jay, which has not aged great, as Anna Jay is the only wrestler to go to Japan and then get worse in the history of professional wrestling. I have firmly settled on Hyo not being on my ballot, and I don't see that changing this year or any of the years that he remains eligible. I think we know who Hyo is at this point. An incredibly popular wrestler who is very good, but very rarely, if ever, do I feel like I am watching a great pro wrestler when I watch him. Now, there are moments when that happens. I thought he blew people away in Vegas on both shows that he was on. I think there are times where when he wrestles a more button-down style in Dragongate, I think he's absolutely superb. I just do not see that enough, and I feel comfortable leaving him off the list this year.
Yeah, I mean, like the minus of that Hio will just do charisma monster stuff and ruin a match is a real reality for him. Like, and we've seen that happen time and time again, even as he is like one of the more popular people in the company. Sometimes, you know, he gets high off his supply and it brings down the match.
I would agree with this.
All right, then I have Madoka Kakuta, who is another person where he's in my tens, and I just can't figure out like the lay of the land where I'm going like, do I believe more Madoka Kakuta than Mao? Like those are the kind of conversations I'm having with him when of course Case you're going to say like, yeah, no, believe in Kakuta more than Mao. But I think that no one, at least during when ballots were open, has done more in 30 days to kind of change people's perspectives of him since this heel turn. And he is someone that I anticipate, if this continues, he'll be moving into my top 10 going forward. But for this year, I'm trying to figure out where he is in the 10s for me.
I had Kakuta at 9 last year. If we were going to vote prior to his heel turn, I would have had him top 15. But I have been so impressed by what I've seen in Z-Brats. He is back in my top 10. He is currently sitting at my number 10. The thing with Kakuta is he has succeeded as a singles wrestler, as a tag team wrestler, as a trios wrestler. He's been a great heel in his career. He's been a great face in his career. We're now seeing him, I think, about to become a really, really good heel, a really great heel, I should say. So you have the potential aspect there. You have the high volume of great matches. And you have the fact that, you know, since his debut almost, you know, we're 5 years into his career and we're about 4.5 years into a pretty sustained Kakuta push. So he's got the star power element as well.
Yeah, and I mean, he's already has, I mean, all the belts that he basically can qualify for. So, I mean, the past achievements there still really push him up for that. I have Hamare at 22 right now. And
okay, I have Hamare at 29, just for reference.
There's no one who is still technically, I think he had his ceremony, so he's not technically a child anymore, but just turning 20, and we have already seen like throughout this time period him having a great debut match against Masaki Mochizuki, turn heel, immediately kind of figure into the Z-Brats heel scheme and getting title matches, and then really just being very restrained. And then the story of 2025, at least if you want to go weirdly local in the city of Kobe, is that Hamare has become one of the most bona fide stars, at least for Dragongate in that building, having strong performances both in the Bravegate tournament as well as winning the Rey de Parejas tournament with Shun Skywalker 3 matches in one night. It's all like projection of Hamare. We've already seen a lot of the tools there to think that he will have continued success, and I think we're only going to see a lot more of this guy on this list as the years go by.
I echo everything there. I don't think I would have put Hamare on my list had it not been for the matches in Kobe, mainly the tag matches with Shun for the finals of the Rey de Parejas tournament. But undeniably, he's 20 years old. And I just can't imagine, unless it's injury or personal problems like SB Kento and Takuma Fujiwara, I just can't imagine Hamare not being a mortal lock for 1 through 15 going forward. It feels like having him in your mid-20s or even in your late 20s like I do, it just feels like that's going to be the worst spot for him for a very long time.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Rita is next on mine. Here's my pitch for Rita. He might be one of the best in-ring wrestlers under the age of 30.
I think he might be one of the best wrestlers in the world.
Yeah, and he's doing this as someone who's 5'1". He has shown an ability of styles. I mean, we all long for MMA Rita at Buyudens, but also showing that he has now gone from being a mascot character to having a fun conceit, and then the idea of him being really small, to just being a tremendous tag team wrestler. His matches with Kamei really kind of helped him set aside like his phases of his own prospective career, going from the mascot now to just him by himself. The hard thing of Rita is going to be like even in a company like Dragongate, that it's easy for someone like that to kind of get locked into a station. And I feel like that he is someone in his mid-20s that it just like this is not necessarily the best measure for someone like Rita. I feel like just because he's such a unique kind of figure that I can easily hear the argument and agree with someone saying like I just don't see him ever being a top of the company guy, and I would have to agree with them because he's going to get hard slotted at one point. Is the question is what slot is it going to be?
The important note for Rita, for those that might not totally be up on their Dragon Gate, is I mentioned that list of names earlier. I look at the card and I go, oh, they could be in the best match on the show. And it's Shun, it's Kakuta, it's Kame, and it's Rita. And I think it's very easy, if you don't watch the product regularly and you just see this insanely small guy, to think that he is, the mascot character that he once portrayed. I'm not joking when I say I think he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. I think he's phenomenal and is routinely phenomenal and is routinely wrestling in high-level matches at this point. So I think very highly of Rita. He'll be a top 20 guy for me.
Ryoya Tanaka is next on my list, the second to last Dragon Gate guy on here. He's just great. He has, since he debuted, he is the one of those rare kind of prospects that there is not really a stop with him. There's not really an adjustment period. He debuted 2 years ago, and ever since then, he's been building upon it. He's in an awkward kind of situation now where they are doing so many different things that the booking does not seem to cater him right now. But I think his Brave Gate matches that he's had, and then the D-Courage versus D-Courage match earlier on this year, there's a lot there for Ryoya Tanaka, and he's someone that that is going to play heavily into Dragon Gate's future in the next 5 to 10 years.
Phenomenal pro wrestler, only getting better. And the thing that intrigues me with Tanaka is I do feel like over the last 3 or 4 months, he's really found himself in the ring, which is crazy because he debuted 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, it was right before World 2023.
Yeah, I think it was May of 23. I think it was the Osaka show they ran in May. So yeah, he's a shoo-in for this list going forward. Had him last year. I've got him again this year. He's, I think, just absolutely fantastic. And a guy who I think one day will be a future Dragon Gate headliner.
And my vanity pick is Akihiro Sahara. I just am endeared to this guy. Like, he is so much fun. He wrestles in a different style from the roster, being a natural heavyweight, and it does not restrain him. He still has the movement and the timing that you would expect out of a wrestler to come out of Kobe, Japan. And, he's going to be a fun person who, at a certain point, they're going to decide it's time to go here. So Sahara might seem weird now at 30 for me, but I could easily see a situation where 2027, 2028, he's in the main event. He's still under the age of 30. And then suddenly he's going to end up being in the top 10 list for a lot of people.
Totally respect that. One of my final cuts, he and Dragon Dia, both guys that I thought about ranking, thought I might rank them. Guys that as of right now, not on my ballot. But I like Sahara a lot, and I expect to vote for him in the upcoming years. Let me ask you this last question before we go. This could apply to one name. Go ahead.
But before we get to this, I do have one other Dragon System person on my ballot.
Oh, go ahead.
Kaito Ishida. He is the best part of Glate. He's still having,
all right.
He's still having strong matches. He's as good as he was when he left Dragon Gate. All the optics and everything aside, there's a reason why they go back to him as champion. The problem is that you're in the netherworld of Glate, that the only person who pays attention to it is me.
I considered voting for Yamamura over Ishida. I didn't really think about Ishida this year. I considered voting for Yamamura and kind of just came to a point where there were just names I liked way more in promotions that were way more relevant. And so Yamamura got the bump. Did not really think about Ishida this year. So it's a no from me.
Yeah, El Lindemann sadly has turned 30, so he is no longer eligible.
I had Lindemann as a top 10 guy last year. So that is a big bummer for Glate in terms of their representation. Let me ask you one question before we go. This could apply to one name. This could apply to multiple names. I've got one specific name that I want to mention for this question, but I'll throw it to you first. Who do you think you're going to be the high vote on?
Dragon Dia. I
Daya,
mean,
yes.
Dia, yes, probably. I have Kamei at 10 right now, and I'm still not happy with that positioning with him. Ishin, maybe I'll be high on. I don't think I'm going to be the high voter on Tony Storm, but I have Tony Storm ranked pretty high, actually.
I've got Storm. It's funny you mentioned her. I've got her right at 15, and I'll be keeping that no matter what. She right now is the bar for me.
That's fair. That's fair. I see the logic. Yeah.
Yeah, I whenever I do a list like this, I have those markings at, you know, either 15 or 25 or 50 or things like that, where I just she's my delineation point, and right now she is 15 for me. She's how I'm rating wrestlers on if I think they're better than Tony Storm, and unfortunately, you know what? I was going to slam Tony Storm while complimenting her. I'm not going to do that. I have Tony Storm at 15. I think she's had a wonderful year. Good for her.
Yeah, I mean,
I was going to throw her under a bus for no reason over something, a hypothetical argument I've been having in my head. I will not be doing that, though.
Yeah,
congratulations, Tony Storm. You're a very good wrestler.
So who do you think you're the high person on?
I think I'm going to be the high vote on Atlantis Jr.
Okay.
Right now, the way my ballot shapes up, I have Shun Skywalker at 1, my close personal friend Kyle Fletcher at 2.
You're not letting Kyle know about this, right?
I'm not letting Kyle know. I also, sorry, Sky Blue, you're not on my 30 under 30. Anna J made it last year, so anything's possible, but you're not making the list. I've got Kiyomiya at 3 and Atlantis Jr. at 4. But even as I say that out loud, I think I'm gonna slot Kiyomiya down. My thing with Atlantis Jr. is, of all the guys on this list, regardless of how old they are right now, but just the guys that are under 30 right now, I think Atlantis Jr. is going to be the guy over the next 10 years that headlines the most shows with over 10,000 people in attendance. And that's factoring in that we assume every CMLL Friday show is doing about 8,000 unless it's a special show. So that's my marker there, is a regular Friday show is doing 8,000, and I think Atlantis Jr. over the next 10 years is going to headline more shows with over 10,000 fans in attendance than anybody else. This guy is so good, and I think so underrated. He has been in I think 5 of my 6 best CMLL matches this year, all trios matches that, you know, he's in there with Mystico and Dorada and Neon, and he is the star of the match. His second fall babyface comeback is the most magical thing I have witnessed in wrestling this year. It is so good. He is so good. I love what they're doing with him. I get the feeling that he's not only going to be heavily pushed continuously throughout the year in CMLL, don't ignore the fact that he's a mainstay in Ring of Honor. And in the same way, like Joe Lanza was talking about this last week, where, you know, Blake Christian on TV right now on AEW TV is a jobber, but in Ring of Honor, they're pushing him as being undefeated in Ring of Honor. Atlantis Jr. not getting a ton of AEW TV time, getting a ton of focus in Ring of Honor. And so I think he's not only, as time goes on, going to be a star in CMLL, obviously, I think he has a chance to make way as an American star and kind of a mid-card, upper mid-card. I don't want to say the comp is Takeshita, but maybe a rung below Takeshita in terms of the way that he could be pushed in America. I think he has the brightest future of anybody in CMLL, over Dorada, over Neon, over Zandokan Jr., who I love, but I have short-term reservations about him. I'm worried about him perhaps jumping to an American promotion right now. So I think Atlantis Jr. at 3 is the guy that I'm going to be the high vote on.
Yeah, I see that logic. Kiyomiya dropped 20 for me this year.
The thing with Kiyomiya is, like, it's not his fault.
It's the booking. How do you like consider this when, like, he's booked to hell, you know?
In last year, he was coming off of the Dragongate run, and we enjoyed that so much. And Noah was booking him not like an asshole for once in their lives, and it all worked out great. And, you know, now we're back to Kaito Kiyomiya as we knew him.
Yep, maybe that was the aberration. Him getting booked great.
He won last year. He won the poll.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I expect him to fall pretty heavily. Like, it's wild.
Yeah, that's not going to happen this year. But Atlantis Jr., I think, is going to be the guy that I'm the highest on. Kakuta at 10, I feel like I could win the Kakuta vote there.
Yeah, that's fair.
And other than that, I don't think I have anybody too shocking. I've got Tony Storm at 15. I am a Callum Newman voter. I've got him at 24 right now. Francesco Akira, I've got at 20 because I think his high-end stuff is really, really good. And as of right now, my 30 is Kaigo Nakamura from DDT. I like him quite a bit. There are a few DDT young guys I wanted on my list. Toy and Sumi were two guys that I really like that I'm not going to have room for. But as of right now, Nakamura is my number 30.
Yeah, I'm bummed that like none of his excursion stuff seems to be happening yet because if more of that stuff was out there, he probably would be on my like 26 through 30, to be honest. Like, he was a tough cut for me personally, but
a lot of those DDT guys were for me. I like their young core. I didn't have a place for a lot of them.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. Well, buddy, do you have anything else you want to touch on before we got out of here?
I do not.
Well, you could follow us on Open VoiceGate on social media, both Twitter and Blue Sky. You can follow Case personally at _InYourCase. I'm at Fujiheya. If you want to join the conversation, step inside the Voices of Wrestling Discord, where there's a solid Dragongate channel, matches of the week, all kinds of conversations during the shows, as well as the Open the VoiceGate channel, that's where we post updates whenever there's an episode of those days. Usually you'll hear about it there first, as well as match listings and all kinds of show notes there at the Voices of Wrestling Discord. But that's going to do it for this week on Open VoiceGate. We'll be back with you next time. Take care.
Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are the co-hosts of Jumping Bomb Audio, the #1 show all about the world of Joshi Pro Wrestling. Episodes drop every other Monday, where we discuss the biggest Joshi news, review shows, and preview the hottest upcoming Joshi action.
So whether you're a new fan or an old fan, we've got something here for you at Jumping Bomb Audio.
Check us out on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
Memorial Day doorbuster deals are here at Lowe's. Right now, rewards members save $80 on the Master Forge 4-burner gas grill, now just $149. Plus, rewards members save $900 on the Lowe's exclusive Hisense French door refrigerator, now only $9.99. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 5/26. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at Lowe's.com/terms. Subject to change.